America, welcome back to the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham, and we're brought to you by the Freedom Chamber online at freedomchamber.net. Joined by Dean Owen and Rod Martin. Gentlemen, it's great to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court ruling that came down today in Louisiana. We're going to talk about OPEC. And Rod, your report inside the Martin Report, spot on. But as we were getting ready to jump on here, the Federal Reserve just said, nope, we're going to remain flat. Rod, your thoughts on that?
Well, we're going to need a personnel change at the Fed. It's just absurd. I'm sure the normal excuses were made, but there aren't any. The truth is we have a third world level of interest rates right now. The economy's booming. This past month, we had 3 times the expected jobs number. What are they doing? And of course, you know what they're doing. They're sticking it to Trump one last time. So, it is what it is. It's all about to change.
Absolutely. Dean, your thoughts?
Well, as much as I'd like to see them where they should be, Truflation's number this morning is 1.87%, which we all know that's a much better number than whatever the BLS is doing. But the timing on it we may enjoy the timing when it does come down because of the midterms, and we all know everything right now is about midterms. So there may be a silver lining in them not coming down yet.
Absolutely. Dean, let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling today about gerrymandering, and you can't utilize the race card when you're trying to draw up districts. Were you shocked by this, or were you kind of like, well, we talked about it last week with Virginia?
Well, I'll be honest, I deferred to Rod on that one, and he'd said that it was blatantly unconstitutional.
Yes.
It had needed to change, but there was some curiosity about, whether they're going to do the right thing or not. And I think Rod hit it right on the head when he said that they kind of dropped the hammer on Trump with tariffs in anticipation of this move. So I know that there was some talk of the last couple of weeks about some of the liberal justices trying to slow this down and slow walk the decision until it was too late to redistrict. So I'm glad to see that didn't happen. So I think we're going to see a wave of redistricting states.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. It's almost like the pebble in the pool of water. You splash it, all of a sudden it ripples out and becomes this big tsunami by the time it hits states like, say, Illinois. Rod, do you see that happening at all, or is Illinois just a locked box of dumpster fire?
Hey, this is no longer discretionary.
Yes.
Everywhere you have one of these racially gerrymandered districts, it must be undone, which means you get a complete redraw of the map for the whole state. So that's going to happen in Louisiana. It'll happen other places too. Here's the thing, in 3 parts. First, racial gerrymandering is racist.
Yes.
It's just obviously racist. Why would you do this? And the answer back, of course, is because black people can't get elected if white people have a majority in their district. Well, okay, wait. America is 12% black, and we elected Barack Obama twice, not once, twice. And wait, there's more, because it turns out there are 21 racially gerrymandered U.S. House districts. There are 3 times as many black representatives. So 2/3 of them were elected by non-black majorities. You don't need racial gerrymandering to do any equity or whatever you want to call it. And finally, this was a Supreme Court decision along all these decades to just invert the relevant section of the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. It's absolutely an inversion in much the same way we have seen liberal courts do in other places. So the courts have forced the states to have this racial gerrymandering. Now the courts are going to force them not to. So again, we come back to where I started. This is no longer discretionary. These states are going to have to redistrict. That's going to eliminate a lot of Democrat seats because, let's be honest, this whole scheme to racially gerrymander had nothing to do with race and everything to do with spotting the Democrats' 21 House seats. Well, we've got a very narrow margin in the House. You can argue back and forth about the polling, but if 21 ironclad Democrat seats that no Republican can ever challenge suddenly aren't, oh, this is a whole new ball game in the fall.
So how's that get unwound? Let's just take the state I live in, Illinois, where you literally have a congressional district that stretches from the southwest side of Cook County all the way down to almost the Mississippi River. The way it's drawn up is just, it's so racially profiled, it's ridiculous. How does that get unwound, even though you have a supermajority in the state of Illinois that's Democratic? Or does the Supreme Court just go, look, you've got to take care of this, go by your census?
Yeah, the courts will actually have to
Yeah.
have the final say on this. And obviously in Illinois, you've got a bunch of Democrat federal judges, so that's going to get appealed, and it's going to be a mess. But look, we've seen this play. We've sung this song. Actually, in law school, my constitutional law professor and my torts professor had their own law firm on the side. And the main thing they did, in addition to their professorial duties, was redistricting cases. And they kept being called into states to help create a plan that would pass court muster as the Supreme Court moved back and forth on what was required and what was permitted and what wasn't at all required or permitted. And they kept changing their minds. So my professors were making a fortune on redoing lines in the same states again and again. And that's where we are now. Only you have a very clear directive from the Supreme Court that race can't play a part in this. And so when the state legislature in Illinois does its thing, when any of these states do, they're gonna have a veto at the court level that is appealable, and we're gonna end up with maps that may not be what you want. I mean, there's no reason that Illinois couldn't do something just like what Virginia did or attempted to do, but there is reason to hope that in states where you have, some reasonable government, you're going to get a better outcome. That is certainly true in Louisiana, where this case originated.
Understood. I did get a inquiry in my mailbox, chuck@freedomsquare.com, and I want to shift gears here. It's directed towards Dean. Dean, we had a gentleman by the name of Mike Cochran from Bellevue, Tennessee, check in with us that he enjoys the Business Pulse every week. He is a Freedom Chamber member, and he wanted to talk to you about taxes and how he can really maximize his CapEx spending, CapEx funding with the new big, beautiful bill, and how that's going to play into his taxes rolling in to 2027. I should have talked to you about this, Dean, before we got on the air, and I apologize, but he had just hit my inbox about 30 minutes before we got on.
Well, I need a lot of details to give good
Sure.
instruction. One of the things that happens with me every single year right around Christmas time, my wife and I will be at a Sam's Club. We'll be at dinner or something at a restaurant, and somebody will come up and go, "Hey, you're Dean, the tax guy, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Should I buy equipment for my business?" Well, how do I know?
That's
if you
pretty
don't
much
have a
what he was
relationship-
asking, Dean. That's pretty much what he was asking.
He needs a relationship.
Sure.
And glad to start that with him, with myself, someone on the team, but or build one with the local CPA, somebody that can help him. But it's all about relationships, because if I don't know that he's going to buy equipment, or I don't know he's going to take a trip, or whatever, I don't know if he's got daycare expenses. I don't know what kind of health insurance situation's in. So all of that stuff plays in. I don't know if he's got kids at home. I don't know total revenues. So when we get all that information, we can give some very, very pointed advice and do some crazy stuff that helps disinherit the government. But we need a lot of detail to do that. And it's a little bit like going to your doctor and saying, "Hey, should I take chemo drugs?" before he ever did his blood test.
Absolutely. And Dean, if you want to reach out to you, I'm going to connect you guys. But to the people watching at home right now and on their laptops, on their desktops, or on their phones, where can they reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
OwenCPA.com. That's OWENCPA.com. Jump online, connect with my team. The conversation and the friendship are always free.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean. I want to shift gears up to Rod Martin. Let's talk about the Martin report today. OPEC. Walk us through your thoughts, your feelings on where we are with OPEC and what it means for the future.
Well, we had two pieces at rodmartin.org today, and the first one was about an equally interesting point, what the Trump administration is doing with these currency swaps, Argentina, now the UAE, and you may think that is just drier than paint. I mean, this is the worst. No, it's actually pretty fascinating. We'll get to that in a minute. But the setup is the UAE's departure from OPEC. This is extraordinary. Everybody may have forgotten about OPEC, but OPEC is the cartel of oil producing countries that terrorized the West for much of our lifetimes. They brought about the Arab oil embargo in 1973 that quadrupled the price of oil, and that price never came down. That price just kept going up from there. But they refused to sell us any oil for a period of time, which utterly disrupted Western economies. And by the way, strongly supported the Soviet Union, which was awash in oil. And that was part of the point. And then in 79, we get the same treatment again, contemporaneous with the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, the Iranian Revolution, the Iranian hostage taking, and they're just absolutely killing us. Well, guess what? Those days are over, because America is now the world's largest producer. We're also the world's third largest exporter, but on that world's largest producer thing, we outproduce Russia and Saudi Arabia put together, and we're the world's number one exporter of refined product and of LNG. And Europe has gone from buying -2% of their LNG from the United States to 60%, which is a big step forward. And we're just cranking up production like crazy. So the UAE leaving OPEC might not have quite the impact it did in 1980, but let me tell you, it's a big deal, because there are only two countries remaining in OPEC that have the production capacity that they can discretionarily reduce to minimize supply enough from the entire cartel to be able to affect or control prices. Those two countries are the UAE and Saudi Arabia. That's it. Iraq actually produces quite a lot more oil than the UAE, but they've got to sell all of it. They absolutely can't afford to just arbitrarily cut production. So the UAE is sitting here. They are being drawn increasingly, inexorably into America's orbit. They have become the top trading partner in the region for the Israelis. They are doing defense and intelligence cooperation with the Israelis. They are a key U.S. ally, and yet haven't gone to war against the Iranians. And the Iranians have been hitting them as if UAE attacked them. They blew up the Fairmont Hotel. They're going after electrical plants. They're going after desalination plants for the country's drinking water. These are all things that the liberals want to tell us are war crimes if Donald Trump threatens them. Guess what? If Iran does it, it's completely fine. Even if Iran does it to a country it's not at war with. Well, the UAE's gotten fed up. So what they're going to do, first of all, they're sticking it to Iran, because if OPEC collapses, the price of oil over the next year to 2 years is going to inexorably drop. Once this war is over, it's going to drop further than we've been predicting here on the Business Pulse. Second, because it'll go back to market rates instead of this artificially inflated cartel price. Second, the UAE is going to nearly double production over the next 12 months. In 2027, they will ship not 3 million barrels a day, but 5. And a lot of that is going to go through a pipeline through Oman that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. This is an earthquake. It's an incredibly big deal. And that currency swap deal I just told you about is part of why it happened.
Look at you tying all the ends together for us, Rod. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Dean.
I can remember back from the late 70s when I was, 10 years old, hearing about the dollar the world was going to stop using the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And
Yes.
I've been laughing at that for, over 40 years now, probably close to 50. But here's another example of where this is going to make the dollar that much stronger. What's going on geopolitically over there? Israel sent troops into the UAE to help them. And we mentioned before, when you get armies that are fighting together alongside against a common enemy, that builds bonds that carry on for decades, for generations. And because the soldiers that are doing that now, they will be telling their grandchildren about this era. And that will carry through for literally for generations. So what we're seeing is a massive, massive reconnection and realignment. The UAE Accords are going to get much bigger. The Abrams Accords. The peace in the Middle East can be had. If it were not for Iran, there would be peace in the Middle East. And what does that do to this world? What does that do to our economy? What does that do to our children's future if we have no conflict in the Middle East? That's a big one. So we do have these gas prices. We do have a little bit of inflation. It's about 1.1% higher than it was before all of this happened and all this started, according to Truflation. But is that price worth it to finally come to about world peace, being in a world where China is not going to attack Iran, where Russia likely loses to Ukraine, and we reset the total global order? And we go back to reindustrializing America instead of deindustrializing her. And so what I would tell people, what I'm telling clients right now, okay, we may have a few more months of this. It can't go on forever. They're losing $500 million a day. Those oil wells, my understanding is oil wells is once you stop them, you really can't restart them and get anywhere near the same capacity out of them. I remember when I was a controller at Air Products, we would run our plants at a net loss to avoid shutting them down because it costs so much to get them back up. And, that's fixed cost accounting, it's manufacturing. So a lot of people don't understand that, but we're like, that regime is in a world of hurt. But like Rod and I've said before, they're absolute fanatics. They're wackos. And, eventually that country will tear itself apart, or the army will rise up against the IRGC, and eventually that's the way it's going to go. It's just a matter of how much pain do they have to suffer. I listened to a guy named Larry Wingate. Calls himself the world's first irritational speaker. And he tells you, he talks about your sitting chair, and I'm sitting in a fairly comfortable chair. But once I sit here long enough that it starts to hurt, then I'll move. And we don't move as people. We don't move until we're uncomfortable enough. We don't know where uncomfortable enough is for the Anish and the people of Iran, but there is a point. And we're just going to keep pushing the button and keep pushing until we find it. And then things will change. And it looks like they're in for a much bigger reset than any of us ever thought was going to happen.
Absolutely.
Or what was even possible.
And the numbers on that are just draconian. The blockade is working, and I don't care how many never Trumpers or seldom Trumpers or Democrats want to tell you the opposite. I don't care if you get a couple of tankers through the blockade, which according to DOD has not actually happened. It doesn't matter because 80% of the Iranian regime's revenue comes from the export of oil. If you're only getting a tanker or 2 or 3 or 30 through, it doesn't matter. You are going bankrupt. Like that clip we keep seeing on the internet, honey, you're broke. Well, guess what? These IRGC guys may be fanatics, but at some point, if they can't get paid, they start questioning their leadership. They start wondering why it is that leaders seem to be doing fine, but the rank and file isn't. And you start having even more factionalization than we've seen. The other thing you see, they're losing $430 million a day because of the blockade. We're doing more damage to them with the blockade than we were doing previously with the bombing. And you say, well, then why didn't we do this to start with? Well, because we didn't have all the naval assets in place to do it yet. We wanted to get all of that military garbage out of the way so that our blockading vessels would be safe. And now they are all in position. And we're doing exactly what I predicted about this before. So where we are today is The Iranians are almost at the point where they're out of storage capacity. When that happens, they're going to have to shutter fields. Those fields, in many cases, are pretty fragile because they've been under sanctions for a long time, and they frankly don't have the technology to maintain them properly without outside help they aren't getting. So, in a best case scenario, you take a field offline, maybe you can get it back online in 5 weeks. These are not frac wells. You can't just flip them on and off. But more likely, you're talking about 7 months or longer in a lot of these cases, just because of the status of those fields. And we're not talking about because of bombing or anything. We're talking about the damage that is done by shutting them down. And you end up with a really significant problem. So the Iranians are really toast here, and Trump is just letting them hang. Eventually, the neck is going to break, and eventually, I think you actually get to that lion and son revolution we're all hoping.
God bless it.
And you got to remember, back in the first Gulf War, we had Iraq had Baghdad, or Saddam Hussein had Baghdad Bob. We don't have a Baghdad Bob today in Iraq or in Iran. They don't really need one because they got Britain, Spain, France, and the Democrat Party of America.
That's right.
So that and all the credibility that Baghdad Bob had, looking backwards, is the same credibility that these folks that are screaming bloody murder about the war now have. So, I've said it before, don't listen to idiots. Stop listening to people.
That's why people, Dean and
0%
Rod, that's why
track
people
record.
should tune to the Business Pulse. Stop listening to idiots. Tune in here.
Yes.
But, gentlemen, we're up against the hard break here. Dean, one more time, where can people get in touch with you?
OwenCPA.com, OWENCPA.com. No S in that. Just jump online, real simple, real easy. We'll send out a couple of weekly newsletters. We send out this video. Connect with my team, and let's talk about how do we disinherit the government and not your
Thank
kids.
you, sir. Rod Martin, the Martin Reports. I see you everywhere. Where can people find you daily?
Well, they need to come to rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. We've got tens of thousands of subscribers for our daily long-form content, analyzing the things that everybody else is missing. And we've got hundreds of thousands of followers on social media. There's a reason. So come to rodmartin.org.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your insights.
Yeah,
Go
if
ahead,
you're not
Dean,
on-
go ahead.
Yeah, if you're not getting Rod's reports,
Yes.
you don't. It's extremely unlikely that you understand the world the way it actually
Rod's,
works.
your insight is remarkable, appreciated, and I truly believe people value it. And we got to get more people over there to rodmartin.org. So I appreciate both of you guys very much. Rod and Dean, thanks for joining us inside the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net. America, remember, I'm going to start closing the show this way, gentlemen. Without 2A, there is no 1A. Enjoy it, guys. God bless America.
Healthcare costs are crushing America's small businesses. Premiums have risen over 240% in the last decade, forcing companies to choose between growth and healthcare coverage. The Freedom Chamber, found online at freedomchamber.net, has a better solution: the Guardianship Healthcare Plan. Designed by a doctor who understands that strong care starts with a strong doctor-patient relationship. This plan puts people first while protecting your bottom line. With up to 45% annual premium savings, the Guardianship Plan delivers real care, real savings, and real freedom. Your business, your employees, your health plan needs the Guardianship. The Freedom Chamber Guardianship Plan. Get your quote today. Learn how your business can take control of healthcare. Visit freedomchamber.net, the pro-American business network.